everybody. Hi, welcome. Thank you all so much for coming to Maintaining Mental Health as a Content Creator. We are super excited to have you. We are looking forward to some great discussions today. But before we get started, I would like to start with a few matters of housekeeping, including telling you about the DragonCon charity partner for 2023, which is CURE. CURE is dedicated to conquering childhood cancer through funding targeted research while supporting patients and their families. You can use the QR codes up at the front to donate, and you can also toss that paper green stuff in the can. And this year, DragonCon is matching up to $125,000 to support the cause, which is pretty incredible. And if you're here, that means that you are attending a digital media track. So I would like to highlight our track sponsor for 2023, Zakat. For over 22 years, they've been empowering lives through disaster relief, food distribution, orphan care, and more. Their top-notch ratings from Charity Navigator and the Better Business Bureau, Giving Wise Alliance means, I can't read the handwriting, I'm so sorry. Giving Alliance means your contributions are going to make a difference. For more information about them and the incredible work that they're doing, you can visit zakat.org. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the panel. My name is Kate Osborne. I am a multi-platform content creator. I'm a full-time ADHD advocate, neurodivergent educator. I'm one half of the Infinite Quest podcast. Unfortunately, Eric could not be here today, but he sends his love. And I'm really excited to be moderating this panel. And just so all of you know, before we get started, we're going to start with some introductions. I'm neurodivergent. I like to know what's going to happen. I'm going to introduce our panelists. We're going to talk for a little bit. And then for the last about half hour or so, we're going to open the room for questions. So that's how we're going to run that. But before we meet our panelists, I would like to ask, how many of you are content creators or aspiring content creators? Okay, very cool. Thank you all so much for being here. That's awesome. And all right, so let's meet our panel, and we'll start down here closest to the door.
That was rude, Kate. All right.
See, I was prepared.
Hi.
She's not.
My name is Jenna. I go by Jenna Chill on the internet, and I do a number of TTRPG and book club podcasts. And I'm not a mental health professional, but I am someone who will openly talk about anything that you want to talk about. So that's my contribution.
Awesome. Well, I'm Nick Lyle. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor, associate, and a certified trauma professional. So I'm a therapist and I'm a cosplayer. On Instagram, I'm Cosplay and Optimism. And my whole thing is just helping connect the nerddom that I love so much and the people who love that to themselves and who they really are and what they really need.
Hello, I am Phaedra Black. I'm a multi-platform content creator. You stole that.
I did.
You
I
did.
stole that this morning, and I'm keeping it forever.
I do adult content. I do TikTok. I do Twitch. I also juggle being a mom and, having a full-time job as well. And I'm not, a professional therapist or anything like that. I just have my own mental health issues. So I'm here to share that side of it without, having the degrees and certifications and all that fun stuff.
I'm Chris Kersey. All right. Can't ever hear yourself.
Nope.
I'm Chris, and I can't talk because it's Sunday. My name is Chris Kersey. I run the YouTube channel Kersey Fabrications. I'm also multi-platform, though, so you also find me on Instagram, X, whatever platform that pops up tomorrow. I'll probably get an account on, so you'll find me there. I post however much I get interaction on those platforms, so thank you. And let's see, what do? I make things with 3D printing, electronics. My specialty at this moment is Iron Man creations. I'm working on a fully realized Iron Man helmet. I've given some panels on that here. And as far as this panel is concerned, I have a full-time job, a large family, and I work to balance all of that while still finding time for myself and creating the content and the stuff that I really enjoy and love to do. So if you have any questions about how do you do that, how much time do you need to make for yourself versus, supporting others, that's my jam is trying to figure out how you balance all of that.
Very cool. Let's hear it for our panel. I like that I'm the moderator, so I can just make people clap whenever I want. Clap now! Great.
The power.
So, like I said earlier, I have a few questions that I'd like to kind of like round table out. We can go down the table in order if you like, or we can just sort of like hot potato it. I believe that's the scientific term. But so the first question that I have is, so as creators, we owe the vast majority of our success to the support of our audience. And so on some level, we know that to maintain that success, we have to continue to earn their enthusiasm. So how do you personally balance the pressure to constantly deliver for your audience while also respecting your own needs, your own privacy, and your own boundaries?
I think for me, if anything ever starts to feel too much, like if constantly posting or constantly interacting online starts to feel too much, then I know that I've overdone it, and I try to take a step back and reestablish my boundaries with myself, and really try to focus on, what things need my attention and my effort at this moment in order to keep engagement up, versus what things can I let slide, and are they going to overall adversely affect my community if I do that?
Yeah, some input I would give on that is very much just the sense of like engaging your audience, connecting to their enthusiasm, while also remembering to connect to your own enthusiasm. And especially when burnout is popping up and things like that, remembering why you're doing this and what it means to you. Because if you're feeling it and you're loving it, the people who love and are excited about you will see that and really connect to that energy.
It's really about understanding your own limitations and what you are capable of doing. Like for me, with the adult content creation, like they expect you to respond to messages. They want entertainment. They want interaction. I make it clear from the beginning, weekends I'm off. Unless I'm at a convention, I don't really interact with my social media on weekends. I'm hanging out with my family, my daughter, my friends. I treat it like a job. I have time off from that job. That's not saying that I don't take other time off throughout the week if I need to, because we take days off from work, mental health days, whatever. But you have to make sure you set aside that specifically scheduled time for yourself.
For me, since it is both my hobby and my passion, I try to spend as much time on it as I can. But that ebbs and flows. Like family has a lot of requirements. My day job goes in and out of having more and more requirements. And I always have to remember that while it is my passion, it is what I'm interested in, it's still going to be there when everything else gets taken care of. And so I make sure that it's more fun to me if the stuff I have to do is taken care of first. I feel like if I feel like there's too much pressure from work or too much pressure from family, that I don't enjoy the work as much, the stuff I really enjoy doing as much. So during those times, I just engage with the rest of the community. I'm on Instagram. I'm responding to other people's posts. I'm interacting on X as people want to contact me. And so I find the downtime is better taking up just interacting and responding to others when I can't produce all of the content that I want to produce myself.
That was a lovely springboard. Thank you so much. So my next question for the panel is, so as content creators, it can be really easy to feel like the work is never done. You have those moments of leisure, but there's always that thought of like, well, I could be making a TikTok, I could be making a podcast, I could be writing my novel, like doing a stream, whatever. So any sort of given day, how do you give yourself permission to stop working and take time for yourself?
I think it just really comes down to me. If I am upset or tired or anything, I am not putting out the best content that I know that I could be. So it's really important for me to do a mental check-in with myself on a daily basis and say, okay, is my content going to be the best that it could be if I do it right now while I'm in this state? Or do I need to take a second and breathe and do some grounding exercises and really, make myself be present in this moment and talk to myself, should I be doing it right now, or should I be doing it in 10 minutes when I have thought things through and breathed and calmed down and reassessed and made things to where I know that I can put out better content.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because like you said, the kind of like 10 minutes like that you might need to gather yourself. I've really found that a lot of times self-care doesn't take as long as I think it's going to take. Sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, well, if I stop and I get water and I eat and I go get some sunlight, it's going to take the rest of my day. I'm never going to get anything done. And I'm also a human who has ADHD and my brain spirals. It's like, how long does anything take? Now, when I come back, how long is it going to take to do emails? So things spiral. But for me, I've learned that if I would just maybe like set a timer for 20 minutes and be like, okay, in this 20 minutes, I'm not going to look at anything until the timer goes off. I'm going to get water. I'm going to take deep breaths. I'm going to step outside. For me, that really, really helps because I'm able to literally recalibrate the machine. It's like turning it off and back on again.
And even if you need a couple days versus time, for me, because with my TikToks and stuff like that, I've talked about my mental health journey and the struggles that I've had in the last couple of years. So for me, it's really easy to be like, yeah, my mental health sucks today and tomorrow. I'm just not going to make content. I'm sorry. I'll fill you guys in, because I've tried to show the ups and the downs and the good parts of the mental health journey. That therapy is not linear, that healing is not linear, that you're going to backtrack, you're going to have setbacks, and having those setbacks doesn't derail the progress that you've made. So you have to be honest with hey, I just need a day. I just need some time. And if you've cultivated a community that is your community, they understand that and they're going to be there tomorrow. So you don't have to overextend yourself for your community.
Like them, I find that the actual act of content creation, when I'm actually creating, is an emotional thing. If I'm not in the right mindset, the product isn't as good, or I'm not able to produce it in the same level, right? Maybe I can't produce as much of it. Maybe I have to hype myself up more. So I kind of take the ebb and flows a little bit better these days. There's a lot to content creation. There's a lot to the processes. Sometimes it's scripting. Sometimes it's editing. Sometimes there are things that I don't need to be in front of a camera to do. And those are all part of the content creation process. So if I don't feel up for recording, then those are nights that I will sit and I will code, or I will make something that doesn't have to be made in front of a camera, or I will make something that I can just point at the part and not focus on my face. Or those will be the nights that I go hide in the office and do my editing. And so since there's so much going on with content creation, or I'll, like I said earlier, I'll go focus on other people's creations and do the socializing part of the content creation. And so just depending on what mood you're in, you'll find that there's a lot to content creation. And so there's different parts of the process that you can do based upon how you're feeling.
Yeah. Something that I think is really interesting is that, especially as you start stepping more into the world of content creation and you're regularly making content, there's these sort of buzzwords that come up. And a big one that comes up a lot is burnout. But something really interesting happened to me actually today after one of our last panels. Was someone came up to me and they're like, hey, people keep talking about burnout, but what is that? Mm-hmm. And I went, oh. And so I was wondering, I think it's really interesting to talk about burnout as a concept, but also what does burnout feel like for you personally? What does it look like for you? Because I have a theory that it looks different and it feels different for everybody. And also I did just find the black marker. It's right there on the floor. It is. Thank you. I have ADHD. But yeah, so I was just wondering, panelists, if you don't mind sharing, what does burnout look like and feel like for you? And then what do you do to sort of mitigate that when you feel that sort of feeling coming on?
For me, it's when I start to give into all of my really avoidant behaviors, when I can't decipher whether I am trying to take a breather or I am avoiding doing the thing because I am now overwhelmed. So for me, it just feels like a total inability to move forward in any of my projects or anything personal or anything like that.
Yeah, for me, burnout can show up in a lot of different ways. But I really notice it the most when it's the sense of everything starts feeling futile. It starts feeling like, why am I doing this? Every time I do something, it messes up. This doesn't matter. It's it just starts feeling like this cycle of my nerves are more and more on edge and things start feeling worse and worse. And I'd rather just lay here than do it because what's the point anyway, right? For me, that's where burnout really hits is in those moments. And so for me to really combat that, I have to acknowledge it for what it is and be like, okay, I'm feeling burnt out. I'm feeling pointless or hopeless or whatever the strong emotion that comes up is. And I have to really let myself feel it and then address it from there, right? Like if I'm feeling hopeless, what about this made me feel hopeful? And for me, that really helps to be like, I know it matters to me to create because I'm a creative. And if I don't get it out of me, I'm going to feel worse. And so that's what I have to do.
For me, it's like burnout starts when imposter syndrome really starts setting in. You're just like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Like, what I'm doing is not good enough. You start just getting to that phase, and then you start getting the lack of motivation to continue the projects that you started. You get overwhelmed, and then it's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna go take a nap. Never mind. But the way for real for that is I do go take the nap, but I go, get the kitty snuggles, and you curl up with, tea and the cat and a book, and you just kind of disconnect in a healthy way, because otherwise you do the avoidant behavior where you disconnect in an unhealthy way. And then getting back into it's a lot harder. But I found ways to healthy disconnect, cat, book, tea, we're good. And after a couple hours, I'm usually good. It's like, okay, let's go. I'm reset.
For me, I think it comes in two forms primarily. The first form is when I just have too much going on in my life and I have to take a step back, because between the three things that I've mentioned, work, family, and the hobbies, like I said, for me, this is still a hobby. An important hobby, though, for me mentally. But when all three of those hit me at the same time, where work needs me full time and family needs me full time, and I'm really in the middle of a project that was due 2 weeks ago, or at least in my head, that I end up just, I don't know what to do with myself. There's too many choices. There's too much I need to focus on. And when that hits me, I end up having to reprioritize. I have to say, this is what's really important. This really does have to get done tonight, where this other thing doesn't. Even though I thought it did, it doesn't have to be done tonight. It's not as important as these other things. Family is the most important. After that, work has to pay the bills, and that's next. And then, honestly, this other stuff will get done when it gets done, even if I'm late, and I'll deal with the consequences. So I ended up having to reprioritize, and some things don't get done as well as they would have before. The other type of burnout, as you touched on, was like when you don't feel like you've met your own expectations, like that video didn't get enough hits. Not enough people commented on that Instagram post. And so you start to self-doubt. You wonder, like, I'm not as good as this other person I follow. Why am I still doing this? Like, they're so much better at this than I am. Am I ever going to meet my own expectations? And for that same sort of deal, I have to take a step back and ask myself again, why am I doing it? Who am I doing it for? And what are realistic expectations, and kind of have to reframe everything again to decide, do I want to keep doing it, or do I want to stop for a little while and take a break and see if I feel better about it later?
There's nothing wrong with those breaks either, because I've done it before. I took a 6-month break from all content creation because life was in one of those points that you have that constant feeling of being overwhelmed. And even when you try to reprioritize, you can't make it work. And so you have to take out the one thing that you can take out. And if it's a hobby or a part-time income,
Exactly.
Unfortunately, content creation is that thing that you do have to let go.
Yeah.
And then it comes back a whole nother anxiety of if you choose to go back to it. And then you're like, oh my goodness, is everyone still going to be there? Or am I starting over?
Or am I going to end up in the same rut that I ended up
Exactly.
last time? Like, okay, I took a 3-month break. That was really nice. I haven't been stressed. Like, why do I want to do that to myself?
Do I really
again?
want to go back?
Yeah.
So my next question, actually, you keep giving me these really solid segues, and I appreciate it so much. So there is a lot of task management that comes with being a content creator. There is the editing, there's the writing, there's the make the video, take the picture. post on the 47 new variants of Twitter that exist. So my question for all of you is, how do you prioritize? How do you decide what gets done in a day? Like, what is your schedule management sort of like strategy?
So I have the awesome benefit of all of my projects are collaborative. So really understanding, whose role is to do this thing and this thing and this thing has been just the most amazing. Because previously it was, I did a few projects that were mostly I was running them and everybody else just showed up. And then we posted that. Cool, awesome, great. Jen, you got this? Awesome. And knowing that structure it's not attainable. It doesn't work for anyone, for one person to be the motivating factor. Really helped me to take a step back and say, okay, it is okay to let other people do part of the project. It is okay to delegate and not even be the boss. Like, say, okay, this is what I have on my plate for today, and this is what I need to do in order to post. I need you to do this section of it, and that's okay to expect your collaborators to step up and help and do the things, because this is also their project as well.
Yeah, for me, it was really finding the accommodation that actually mattered for me in the scope of my ADHD and my anxiety to get past it, like actually blocking things out and prioritizing. And for me, it's I have to do it on paper and I have to use erasable ink pens, because then I can color code it. And if I'm wrong about how I time block something, I can erase it and I don't have to instantly feel like, oh no, now I've messed up my whole planner and now what do? I don't have that much time, right? And I have to time block very intentionally and be like, this color means this and this color means this. And then it's actually fun to me and it becomes more of a game rather than but what if I'm wrong?
Also, this is a complete segue and it's so silly. But fun fact, erasable pens react to heat. And so what you can also do is, if you're having a particularly bad day, is you can have the erasable ink in your planner and then you can take a lighter and then erase it from underneath, and then you feel like a magician. You didn't screw up your schedule. You're just magic.
You're so right, and it's excellent.
Never tried
Sorry, please continue with this serious mental health discussion.
For me, it's like my schedule, I found doing things as a weekly schedule definitely helps more than like a very rigid daily schedule, because as a parent, your week is fluid. There, you can have the best schedule laid out and yeah, it can change in an instant. And so having a list of things that I need to accomplish over the course of the week is a lot easier for me to maintain. I tend to spend one day of that week doing the content creation, because that requires like brushing my hair and putting on makeup and stuff. So I kind of want to do all that at once. Makeup's expensive. I don't want to put makeup on every day. But then I can give myself, the rest of the week to edit things and, post things and schedule posts and do all of those things. That way it's not like, oh my God, I have to do this today and this today and this today and this today and this day. It's just like, okay, cool. Here's my list for the week. And then, you cross them off. And it's, it's a sense of accomplishment when you cross the things off the list. I did this. And then you can see the things from a weekly basis. Is if you start putting too many things on a weekly list, it's like, okay, I'm not getting to this much stuff every week because life's just happening. Maybe I kind of need to reprioritize what I'm trying to accomplish in a week. And maybe, I only do this week and I'll do that, do something else next week and get on a 2-week schedule for some of the things you're trying to do. Because I do that in the summer. I can't do content every week in the summer because kids home, we have things we're doing, we're traveling. So it's like you try to do all the content creation every other week. You may do a little bit more, but you just do it every other week versus every week. And that's just the adjustment to the schedule that you're doing based on life.
Yeah. Can I add to that too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on the to-do list thing, I would overwhelm myself by having too much on my weekly to-do list too. And so I started structuring it as like, these are the things that are like due this week, like have to do. And so I'd put those on my weekly ones in a way that makes sense and is obtainable for me. And then I'd have a separate to-do list that maybe like isn't on my planner or isn't dated. That's just like, and here are some other things. If you can pepper them in, please do, because it's great to check them off.
If something has an actual due date, put the date that it needs to be done by in your to-do list.
Yes.
Like, because my daughter's in scouts in school and stuff, and sometimes there's things that get peppered into that list of, I need to fill out this piece of paper by this date.
Yes.
If I don't put the date, it just gets into that, I'll do it tomorrow, it'll be on the other list. And yeah, dates help.
I actually don't think I have much to add. I think they've covered a lot. I mean, I do a lot of whiteboards in my house. They're everywhere. They're in my office and in the kitchen and in the garage, and I keep track of everything I want to do, particularly in the content creation or in the social media front. I make lists of things I want to do. If there are hard deadlines, I do put them next to it, like you say. But I've just had to learn that, particularly with depending on where this lies in your priority list, you have to prioritize it accordingly. And if you make yourself a list, you have to be willing to realize that that list may not get done, and that when you get to next week, that list will still be there, and there will be still things that you meant to do that you didn't get to, but now you can get to them. I have extremely productive weeks where I get way more done than I planned. And then I have other weeks where I hardly get anything done. And I will say that a vast majority of that time, it's beyond my control. But I had to prioritize, and I had to just say that these things were more important, and these things will come later, and maybe I'll catch up, and maybe I won't.
So last question before we open it up to questions from the crowd. But I think for me, one of the hardest things that I sort of had to combat when it came to like my mental health as a content creator was the fact that no matter what we do, no matter what we make, a certain percentage of people who consume or view our content are going to hate it or hate us or take the time to send us mean DMs, to tell us that we suck and we should quit forever. So how do you reconcile that reality with your own sort of confidence and mental health as a creator?
It's just a person on the internet. That's my thing. But so I said this earlier in another panel, but when somebody does something in a space that I am in charge of or is related to me and I don't like it, in order to sort of gain some responsibility over that, I like to take a screenshot and print it out, and then I destroy it in a violent manner. Because
Are we back to the lighter?
yes, actually, I do burn them sometimes. But you can't control other people on the internet, but you do have control over that piece of paper that's on fire.
Yeah, for me, it's really big on just being like, I'm not for everybody. Like, I'm not for everybody personality-wise. I'm not for everybody content-wise. I'm not for everybody as a therapist for sure, right? Like, and I'm just under the impression that like my message and what I do and the point of my work and what I create and stuff is getting to people that I am for, and people who do enjoy it, and people who do love it, and people who do need to hear what I'm talking to them about, what we're addressing in session, things like that. And that everybody else is just like, I'm sorry, go find someone else. Why are you still here? I'm not for you.
Like for me, I'm one of those people that I will make response videos on TikTok to some of the like comments that people make because I find it amusing. Like I get some that, the general gist of the responses will really be like, it says more about the person making those comments than it'll ever say about you as the creator, because people are projecting their own issues, their own insecurities, their own failings as a human being onto these content creators and lashing out on us for things that they can't control in their own life. They do this to try to build themselves up and feel better about themselves versus anything that you're doing in your own life. And you have to take it with a grain of salt because it's not you, it's them.
Yeah, and I would love to add to that too. Yeah, from just like the mental health side of things, it is 100% true, because people are only looking at the things that you're putting out through the lens of them and their trauma and where they're sitting. And so you're absolutely right. It has nothing to do with you.
So in the space I'm in, where I'm actually making things, and you put yourself out there with your creations, And I think that's going to be true for a lot of people, whether they're a musician, whether they're a singer-songwriter, whether they're a maker like myself who is actually making things with their hands. I think the biggest fear that I ever have is with the imposter syndrome, and we have already done a panel on that one that was that was packed in here. So I think the imposter syndrome is what I fear most, because the wrong person coming in and telling you that you did that wrong, or that there was a better way of doing it, or criticizing your work in some way that you weren't really prepared for, can be, pretty hurtful. And I think, like, you have to, number one, I always prepare myself when I put something up. I will go, what could I have done better? What kind of criticism could I get for this project? And if I can prepare myself a little bit, then I'm actually prepared to respond. And so that takes a little bit of the fear away, because now I go, okay, here are all the things I could be criticized for. Here are my responses to them. Saves me a little bit of time and anguish on the backside of that. But other than that, what I will do a lot of times is take a step back and actually, this works for me. It's not going to work for everyone, but I love to catch people off guard that criticize me and turn what may have not been positive criticism, but actually turn it back on them as positive criticism. Like, respond in a very positive way to a negative comment. And that doesn't work for everyone, and it doesn't work for every space. But for me, I really like that, because the number of people that I can tell by their response that I've thrown off guard by responding like, oh, you really you shouldn't have done it that way. I'm like, oh, really? So tell me, what's your feedback? How should I have done that better? And like, you get this response that all of a sudden becomes constructive, and you were like, oh, okay. And so if I can catch someone off guard that way and maybe make them think about how they responded, then I feel good about myself, because now I've actually made that person question themselves about how they respond to people. And maybe I've saved someone else a comment in the same space.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so I am going to open it up for questions, but before we do that, a couple of ground rules. Please remember that there is a difference between a lengthy comment and a question, and the more time that you give us to answer the question, the more time that we can get through questions. Kindly, thank you. Also, if you don't mind, please keep it to about 5 people in line at a time. That way we don't have to leave anyone languishing for hours and hours and hours and never get to their question. And Leslie, as you step up to the mic, if you don't mind introducing yourself, that's fine. But also, we are streaming live, so if you don't want to say your name on the internet, that's fine too. But otherwise, yeah, go ahead and hop up if you've got questions. Otherwise, I've got a few more in my back pocket that I can use to vamp until then. Yes, question about the questions. Yes.
Yes. So is there an opportunity to ask a question from our seat? We just don't let her.
I can, if you don't want me to pan to you, let me know, and I just pan to you.
Okay.
There you go.
Respect.
Yeah, consent is important.
So Stephen Undesirables. The question I had is, I'm a Twitch streamer, and so that's very, very much an entertainer, and so I find that I kind of go through these cycles of kind of compartmentalizing and then integrating, where it's the part of me that has to be an entertainer kind of sometimes starts to drift further and further away from who I actually am, because I'm not happy all the time, right? But you've got this pressure to perform, to be on, to be happy. And eventually these two get so out of sync that there has to be that integration, like, come back. And so I just wonder, is that a common experience? And if you have that, how do you feel about it? What do you do about it?
I'm moderating, but I'll answer too sometimes, I guess. Oh, also, that was the other thing I forgot. If you have a question for a specific person, please just let us know, and we're happy to answer one-on-one. But for me, yeah, I accidentally, and it wasn't even on purpose, I did this thing where when I started making content, people kept being like, you're like Mr. Rogers, but kinky. And I loved that. And I loved that people thought I was wholesome. But I am not a wholesome being. I am a whole person with flaws. And so the harder I try to sort of hold on to this wholesome persona, the more it really started to feel like I was like this fake lying liar face. And so what I did was I was honest about it. I honestly just started saying like, hey, you know what? Sometimes I drink whiskey and I like stuff, and it sounds silly, but what wound up happening was that the opposite thing to what I thought was going to happen happened. I thought people were going to be like, oh my God, you were fake the whole time. But what instead they said was, thank you. They were like, thank you for being honest. Thank you for sharing that part of yourself with us. And so it became a lot easier to be like, when I am having a bad day, when I am having mental health issues or whatever, I'm able to just look at my audience and be like, I don't know, man, we're going to play marble racing and that's what you guys get today. And that's fine. And they kind of just understand that because I'm more willing to just sort of say, I am me as a whole and not just entertainment Katie.
And I'll actually just comment as a consumer. I mean, as a consumer, I like to know the people that I'm following or watching. And so the idea that I all of a sudden know a little bit more about that person, it's more of a whole person, then I think that person is more interesting. Yeah. They're not one-dimensional at that point. The type of live streaming I do is luckily fairly far apart. I do some live streams once in a while, but if I personally am not up to it, I will cancel a live stream because it's not going to go the way I wanted. Maybe there's a sponsor involved, and so I would be representing that sponsor inappropriately, or just not to my full ability. And so, yeah, I would take both of those options. Either be yourself when you can be yourself, or take a step back when you're not willing to be.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the pressure is self-imposed, and just don't do that.
Well,
Or you do what I
necessarily
do.
don't do that. I think like you are allowed to create a persona and have
Sure.
that be the person that you want the world to
Oh,
see, but you need to decide exactly where the wall is,
Yeah.
and whether or not you are wanting to allow people to see behind it or not.
Yeah, you can do what I do and put like the breakdowns on TikTok and people see the bad days. I don't hide that part of my content. Like I show the down days, the tears, the frustrations. I think you were actually there for one of the Twitch streams that I
usually
did
there.
where like it ended up being an hour of me in tears just talking to everybody about what was going on in life. Like it was, but that was cathartic in a way because you finally stopped going, I'm going to keep it to myself and not talk about it. You let people know this is what's going on in life. And the feedback from those content things that I do is from people going, thank you. You're a real human being. You have feelings. Oh my God, you're going through this too. I relate to that. Thank you for showing that content creation isn't roses all the time, that it's real life. It's gritty. It's dirty. It's emotional. It's draining. Like some people like to realize that I really thought about going into content creation, but seeing like the trauma that you go through, yeah, that's not for me. I can't do that. And you know what? That's a good thing. I'm glad that people can see that and make that choice for themselves that I don't want to go here because it's not for everyone at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're creating a type of content that's not like you as you on the internet, if it's like literally you're playing a character or you have something like that that's going on, I encourage kind of the sense of like the reframe of stepping back and being like, okay, I can use this character as healthy escapism. I can use this as a way to step away from everything that's so hard, to put it down for a minute and step into like when the camera's rolling, I get to be like, I don't know, Buddy the Elf, whoever I am, like, you know what I mean? And like embrace that part too. Cause I know not everybody's content is as themselves.
Yeah, no, I full-time cheat and just be a VTuber sometimes. So that's like complete separation.
Yeah.
But thank you for the answers.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Omar. I do TTRPG streaming for Tale 20s. And that last question, thank you. That was one of my questions and fantastic answer. Thank you so much. But I do have another one for anyone. I find that I place a lot of the work on running the channels, the streams, and everything on myself. And I realize that although we have to be people of many different hats, I don't have that many heads to place them on. How do you go about asking for help or getting someone on your team and figuring out who is really there to help you and who's just there for the hype, for the run, and then ready
If you
to
figure that
ditch.
out, let me know because I still do it all myself.
We just had a panel yesterday on building a community and how you build that community. And so we had a lot of answers there for this question. So I encourage you, that should be archived on Twitch. You should be able to go watch that panel. And so I just want to point you there for more information. But in that panel, we talked a lot about finding the members of your community that want to give, that want to contribute more. And to your point about like some of them just want to jump in and jump out. Well, maybe you figure out how do I let that person help for while they want to help. It still takes the pressure off of you for the time that they want to run and gun and then get out. And you have to find someone else to help you out. I don't look a gift horse in the mouth with too much, unless they're trying to use you. You don't want to be used. I'm not trying to suggest that in any way. But definitely looking for people. Also, look at the people that are around you in your community that are there and that are present, but maybe haven't approached you to help. Maybe you approach them, say, I see you around a lot. Do you want to help me out? Do you want to moderate? Do you want to do this or that? And then, so you approach them instead of waiting for someone to approach you.
I also, as somebody who I have a team now, when I started, I was doing the exact same thing as I was wearing 47 hats. And it just got to the point where my platform got too big and I just couldn't anymore. And that was really hard for me because like I internalized it as like a failure of like, oh, I have to ask for help and that means I'm a jerk. But so I started out going to my community. And I still have some community moderators and like that kind of thing. But I really do, I hire professional. And I really advocate for hiring professionals because then you don't have to worry about like hurting somebody's feelings who's part of your community, or if they're doing a bad job as a mod and you have to like fire them and then it's awkward because they're an OG and like you want to keep them around, but now it's weird. It's
like hiring family to do your wedding.
Yeah. And so I hire professionals. So I have mods. I also have I hired I have a publicity person and like a booking manager and all of that. But I hired those people from Indeed. Like they submitted resumes. I had a job interview process. Like they filled out forms and taxes and like that kind of thing. Because I think at some point, you as a creator, you're responsible for not only protecting yourself and your brand, but you're also responsible for protecting your community. And sometimes just getting a professional in to do that work removes the hat from your head, but also doesn't put the weight back onto your community and expects them to work for free or, like that kind of thing. So hope that helps.
I mean, I recently hired an editor for the first time because I hate editing. Like I enjoy creating content, but editing takes me a week for a video that I've recorded. And it's just extremely, it's too time intensive for me, even if I enjoy it, if I had more time. And particularly if what you're doing is still part-time, it's just extra income for you. I decided that for me to continue to create content, it was worth taking a hit on that extra income, even though it was a pretty substantial hit because I hired a good editor. But I'm like, maybe this is what I need for long-term growth. So take the hit short-term. Maybe it's good for you long-term. Going back to what she said about hiring a professional, I think it was worth it for me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi there, I'm Brian. I do writing, game design, videos, boards, RPGs, a whole lot of everything. I guess my question is about motivation with ADHD. I know one of the struggles that we have is kind of getting that endorphin fix and whatnot. And I've noticed it's, trying to think how to phrase it. Sometimes the content creation is fun, but then, you get to the more tedious parts of it. And it's much easier to get that endorphin fix by just going to play video games instead of making them or whatever. Any tips?
Anybody? I mean, I've got tips, but I just don't want to take up all the space. I mean, this is maybe going to sound a little bit tough love, but it's Sunday of DragonCon and I'm sleepy. There comes a point where this becomes your job. And that sucks to a certain extent, because it's like a lot of us get into it for the joy and the excitement of like, I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, and it's so much fun. But at some point, you have to answer your emails or your job goes away. At some point, you have to manage your social media or you're not going to have a platform anymore. And so that can be really difficult for especially people like us with ADHD or other neurodivergencies. And so I think as much novelty as you can throw in, like I do different stuff every day. I do it in a different order every day. I do it on a different schedule every day, but I do it every day. I do also allow myself breaks. Like if I am feeling that burnout, if I am feeling that self-imposed pressure to like, if I don't get 7 videos out, my brand is going away. That's not true. So you have to learn how to navigate this sort of like self-imposed pressure of expectation and executive functioning and the dopamine seeking of maybe this video will get 1 million views. But you also really have to responsibly balance it with the fact that if you want to do content creation for your job, it is your job. And you got to put a certain number of hours in a week because that's how jobs work. And like we said earlier, content creation is not for everyone. And if it's something where that is like the real struggle or like the real hardship is that finding that focus, awesome, you're a fantastic part-time content creator. You are a kick-ass once a week content creator, but it may not be the thing that you want to do full-time because there has to be that element of buckle in and get it done, or it's not going to get done.
And
that sounded grumpy. I'm sorry.
And I recommend finding out what specific things are hard for you and why and when, because in a world that's not built to accommodate us, we have to figure out how to accommodate ourselves. And so whether it's like, okay, I can do editing, but only if I have these big headphones on that either cancel all the sound or that blast freaking Kesha, I don't care. Like whatever it is, if that's what makes you focus, then you have that and don't let anybody take it away from you. If it's fuzzy slippers, if it's you do 10 seconds and then you get up and you lay on the floor and roll around, whatever it is that like accommodates you, I encourage you to just shamelessly give it to yourself, because there are reasons that things are harder for us. And sometimes we don't even know what it is. Sometimes we're overstimulated and sometimes we're understimulated. And if you're having a hard time focusing, I recommend trying upping the stimulation. If that makes it worse, I recommend trying decreasing it. And that could be taking away stimulation such as there's a scratchy watch on your wrist. That could be taking away stimulation like no big light. Things like that, right? I encourage you to figure those things out for yourself.
For me, sometimes it's time of day. Like I can't edit in the morning. Like if you want me to focus on editing content before like 4:00 in the afternoon, my brain's just like, you know, I can't do it. Editing for me is curl up in the bed with the comforter, the laptop, the cat, some crime show in the background, and that's my focus. Anything outside of that, I don't want to do it. I don't want to.
Sometimes I do my best work late at night.
Use the big light.
So like, yes, time of day is different things. I don't want to create content at 11 o'clock at night. I'm tired. I don't want to take the makeup off. My face is itchy. I'm grumpy. I don't want to.
And if it is part-time, go with your ebbs and flows, like I was saying before. Like some evenings are editing evenings and I feel it. And some evenings are garage evenings and I feel that, and I'd rather be out in the garage working. And then there are the nights where I just want to sit on the sofa and watch YouTube videos with my wife, and I let myself do that. It's important to me and to the relationship to take those times and go, no, this is a night that this needs to happen, and that it's not a work night. Work with the people and the other responsibilities in your life to work with your ebbs and flows as much as they possibly can, because I find that that's really important. To decide with those around you, what is your schedule and how is that going to affect those people as well?
Yeah. So I also have ADHD and I love playing video games. That it does give me that little hit. But what I'm a 100%er. Like I like to do every single little thing, get all of the collections, do all of the tasks. And I realized that what I'm doing is I am completing tasks. So now what I like to do is I like to gamify every aspect of my life. I am completing those tasks. I am collecting all those little bits. And now it's fun. Oh no, what have I done? I'm productive.
I think we have time for a couple more questions. So I think we'll cap it at Charlotte, and then we'll call it good. But all right, next question.
My name is Brian Scuttle. I'm a film critic, podcaster, occasional YouTube video career. One of the things that I've certainly found over the past 4 or 5 years, especially getting more and more online in terms of promoting my, my reviews and podcasts and all of that on social media, is that a lot of the other content creators, I feel like that get some of the most strongest views. I feel like one of the questions talked about authenticity, and some of the strongest content creators in film discussion come from a place of sometimes very hostile negativity. And for somebody who tries to be relatively positive and especially honest in working in good faith in my own reviews, it can certainly be a bit deflating to see that happen. So if you are faced with people who create the same type of content that you do, but do it in a way that kind of goes against how you feel content should be, created, how do you all deal with that struggle?
Let me take a spin on that one, because it's one thing I've had to deal with is I feel like my normal demeanor is relatively low key. Like if you put me in front of an audience, I'm much more flamboyant than if you put me in front of a camera in the garage. Okay, and so one thing I always have to remind myself, particularly I've been doing YouTube for 5 years now, and it's been a real slow crawl for me with spikes and then big downtime as I've been trying to grow again. And one thing I've had to learn is that one thing that you are is entertainment. And it's difficult for someone that just wants to get in front and just wants to talk to people and just wants to share our knowledge. It's sometimes difficult to remember that we're entertainment. And the way you get views is the same way everything else gets views. You have to have a hook, and you have to keep them entertained through your content. Otherwise, they're going to turn off. They're going to do something else. And I've had to learn to accept that myself. And therefore, I've had to learn how to reframe some of my videos, be more exciting than I normally would have felt comfortable being about something, and just try to learn the entertainment business as well as I know the making business. And so I encourage you. I don't feel like you have to reframe positivity to negativity, but I think if you're going to bring positivity, then you have to be entertaining with it still. You have to make it sound exciting. You have to hold people's attention while you're giving that review. And I hope that is as good an answer as any, because becoming something you're not for your audience is, I don't think that's any sort of answer, because you won't be able to maintain that because it's not you. The only thing you're bringing to your content is yourself. But that doesn't mean that you can't enhance yourself and be more of you and bring more of that and more of that personality. I find like my best videos are the ones where I probably uncomfortably show more of myself than I felt like it, but the audience just absolutely loves it.
Yeah. And be genuine and buy into your positivity, like you were saying,
Yes.
where you're more vulnerable.
Yes.
Like if don't be positive for the sake of being positive. Be positive for the sake of you're just like, yes, I love it. And it's good. And here's why. And like the things that you have enthusiasm about. And also, if other people are creating things that are not in line with you, for me, I do not consume their content.
Yeah.
If it skews anything that's going on for me and how I relate to things, swish, bye.
I think it was just
I-
talking competitively.
Yeah.
I do want to move on to the last question, so we have time for it. But thank you for that lovely question.
My name is Charlotte Moore Lambert. I make content as Kavatica on all of the places. This is probably the best question for Nick, or at least I'd be very interested in your professional perspective on this. As I've been listening to the panel, what I've gathered is that we often talk about how our mental health manifests as online creators as though that is somehow distinct from the rest of our lives. And when I watch other creators going through it online and they're talking about trauma or having RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, or ADHD, or being on the spectrum, whatever it is, it seems to be if I do this here on TikTok, then that will solve my problems with TikTok, when of course what we're talking about are lifelong issues manifesting in front of an audience. And I would love to know if you all see therapists in your own lives, how this discussion comes up. And I would also love to hear if there is a dialogue in the therapy community right now, because this is a brave new world for a lot of people, and it's not very natural humans to sit in front of cameras of big audiences and share every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
So how holistically do you recommend people ask questions about that to therapists who may not have any perspective, like what's the TikTok?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's absolutely a conversation in the therapist community, like big. Like there are huge conversations about what's going on with TikTok, with Instagram, with Twitter, all of that, the impact that has, the impact of finding validation from other people, feeling like, okay, I'm not alone, other people have these experiences, versus using that for your therapy, right? There are so many things that can be therapeutic. Like one of my big things is talking about the therapeutic benefits of cosplay, because I'm a cosplayer myself. A lot of things are therapeutic, but aren't therapy. And a lot of people confuse the two of those things. So like, you know, I'm a therapist, I see a therapist, it just keeps going, right? And I think it always should, because we need to be able to check in on these things and be able to actually process them and what's coming up.
So my therapist is a TikTok creator as well. He has a lot of followers, but it's really good that he is also a content creator as well, and he follows my TikToks, and it's really kind of funny because our sessions start off with, so the stuff you posted this week, was it content or is it something we need to talk about? And that is how we start our sessions. So we differentiate between, was it just a sound I wanted to use? Was it something that was just, could be entertaining, or did it have relevance to something that has happened in my life this week or in the past? And that is always our starting point for our weekly sessions.
I'm the exact opposite. My therapist, I see two therapists because I'm so unwell. But no, my therapist purposely doesn't watch my content. And that was like a conversation that we had. And so my therapist does that because if I'm having issues, she wants me to be able to sort of come to her and say, hey, this is what's going on. And like, I've shown her TikToks, or like, this video that I made with the script that I wrote explains this better. But yeah, I as a creator, I really advocate that outside supports, outside structures like that are good. It's really easy to talk about maintaining mental health in this sort of container of, and we have to do it by ourselves. But when in reality, like, a lot of us are going to therapy on the side.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you both showed like opposite sides of that, right? There's so many different ways that people are therapists and the ways that people engage with you. Some people love to consume your content, understand you better, engage with you that way. Some people don't want to be any part of that because they want to be able to trust that you'll bring up what's necessary and that they're intuitive enough to sniff it out if you're not. And then also, like, if you're seeing a therapist and they have no concept of what it is that you do and who you are, and they have no frame of reference of understanding you, you might want to find a therapist who has some background in that, right? Because we're not supposed to practice outside of our scope. And that can include working on diagnoses and things like that we're not trained to address. Like if you're not trained in working with hallucinations and things like that, and you say you can. But that can also go to stage of life things. Like if you're working with queer and trans people and you're working with creators and nerds and different things like that, and you have no frame of reference for it, you might be practicing outside of your scope. So if you feel like your therapist is not informed to work with you, there might be someone who's better suited for you.
So thank you so much for that question, by the way. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But before we go, I just want to give all of our wonderful panelists the opportunity to let you know who they are one more time, and also where you can find all of their great content if you want to keep these conversations going.
Yeah, I'm Jenna Chill all over the internet. You can find me on a number of TTRPG actual play podcasts and book club podcasts. You can find all of those at linktr.ee/join the clubs with an S.
I am Nick Lyle. I'm a cosplayer and a therapist. You can find me on Instagram at cosplay.and.optimism.
I am Phaedra Black, and I do all kinds of things, but you can find me at phaedrablack.com.
I'm Kersey Fabrications. I make things on the internet, and you can find me on pretty much all socials at Kersey Fabs.
And I am Kate Osborne. I go by Catieosaurus on all corners of the internet. I am a neurodivergent educator and advocate and occasional TTRPG player. And you can check me out on the socials as Catieosaurus. I lost it halfway through. As Catieosaurus, or you can visit catieosaurus.com for more information. But once again, thank you all so much for coming out. Thank you so much for being part of these important mental health conversations. Thank you to the DragonCon Digital Media Track for having us. And thank you to our track sponsor, Zakat, for all of the great stuff that they do. You can visit zakat.org. But otherwise, thank you so much for being here and have a great rest of your con.